So I'm now in conversation with Paolo Milia, who
Ciao.
holds several positions. I've known Paolo for a few years now. He's been involved with the International Society for Digital Medicine, where he's a vice president. But he's also chair of the Department of Neurology and Neurorehabilitation Research at the Istituto Prosperius Tiberino, and he's a professor at the University of Perugia. So he has many strings to his bow, and I've always been impressed by the particular work that he's been doing with neurorehabilitation and exoskeletons. That's the thing that I remember you most for. But I want to start at the beginning, and you tell me how long you've been involved in medicine and how it all started. How's your career developed?
Yeah, David, it's a great pleasure to be here with you. It's amazing because the last time we had seen each other, we were in China, exactly 1 month and a half before starting this terrible virus all over the world. So it's very impressive now watching behind you the picture about the Chinese nurse involved in the open ceremony of one of the biggest hospitals in the world with our friend and colleague, Professor Zhang. So thank you for this nice interview. I am a neurology. I got my degree with the University of Gabriele D'Annunzio in Chieti. It's a small city in the middle of Italy. And then I started my residency within the University of Perugia, when I'm still working on, and my residency in neurology, and I start to work within the stroke unit. There was one of the first stroke units in the middle of Italy, and so it was a very interesting work in terms of clinical practice and research practice. Due to this, my involvement in cerebrovascular disease, then I spent 1 year being a research fellowship with Professor Ken Lees. Professor Ken Lees is one of the leaders about neuroprotection within the University of Glasgow, where I was a professor for about 1 year. And at the same time, I was the only neurologist within an hospital of 1,300 beds. So it was a very great job, a very nice and important experience that time. And I also got some good knowledge about double blended whiskey. That is not a bad thing as well.
Absolutely. Well, you stole my thunder there, because I did spot that you'd been in Glasgow at some time, and I just wondered how you got on with Glaswegians, whether you could understand them at all.
And soon after I came back to Italy, I got my PhD and about neuro recovery and cerebrovascular disease. So I start to work with Prosperius Institute. Prosperius Institute is one of the most important rehab centers here in Umbria. And we start to collaborate in a very productive, a good way. So I started to work with robotics applied to neurology, because I had a very good experience within the stroke unit. And the most difficult aspect soon after the acute phase was recovering or starting to have a really good rehabilitation setting. Okay, I saw that this was a problem all over the world. So I started here to organize a very efficiency department related with acute cerebrovascular disease. We have 3 stroke units here in Umbria. One is Perugia, the second one is Città di Castello, and the third one is in Terni. That are 3 cities of Umbria. And so we start to cooperate with all these people, accepting and admitting patients soon after their acute phase. To be honest, I have to thank as well my medical director and my administrative office, because they apply over my idea, and my idea was that physiotherapy cannot be involved only with this difficult patient, because we need enough power and we need enough strength to take care about very, very difficult motor disease, because patients affected by hemiplegic motor dysfunction. So we need a good physiotherapist, but at the same time, we need a good robot that can take care about this patient. So we start to study about different technical aspects related with neurorehabilitation, and we focus on exoskeletons, because wearable suits, wearable robots are quite important, not only for stroke patients, cerebrovascular disease, but can be applied to all other neurological disorders like spinal cord injuries and neurodegenerative disorders like Parkinson's disease or multiple sclerosis. So we start step by step working with different types of patients, using different types of exoskeleton. You have seen during my interview with the ISDM and during my conference with ISDM about the different type of exoskeleton we are working. Just before the lockdown, we have started to work with the Italian exoskeletons, and we hope soon after the SARS-CoV-2 will go away to start again working with these exoskeletons.
Yes. And the exoskeletons, just enlighten me a little bit more. So obviously they empower the patients to be able to carry out physical exercises that they would be unable to carry out on their own. My understanding of neurodegenerative diseases is very limited, so forgive me for my ignorance. But these types of patients, are they able over a period of time to recover some of their own physical capabilities without the aid of the exoskeleton, or will they always be reliant on robotics and the exoskeleton?
This is the type of research that we are running here, because this is the main goal. We wrote a paper and we wrote a research program that has been published recently, I believe on Digital Medicine as well, journal, and where we are describing the effects of the exoskeleton in some types of patients that can completely recover in terms of motor function, and at the same time we are studying patients that cannot recover in terms of motor function. But neurological disease is also considered by many other aspects, many other clinical aspects. They are not only related with motor function, okay? These are autonomic problems because of our problems, okay? There are intestinal problems as well. So the exoskeleton is helping people to recover globally. And our goals is, if patients cannot move independently, cannot move alone, it can use at home the exoskeleton that can be part of his motor function, okay? Yeah. So being the exoskeleton part of daily activity, so we have developed a program teaching how to use an exoskeleton in our rehab center, because always you need a clinical approach to all these patients. Yes. And then we are learning, we are teaching the patient to use the exoskeleton at home, like part of his own life.
Yes. So really you're giving them the life back. And what intrigued me about asking that question is what I know as muscle memory, you know, because I don't play video games very often, but one of the video games that I used to play was called Guitar Hero. Basically, you used an electronic device that you played like a guitar, and the idea was that you're supposed to play alongside a rock band. And so you had to hit the right notes and you had to get the timing right, and you got scores for how good you were. And I noticed that when I was playing this game, I would get to a point where I could not improve anymore. I was getting my best scores, and so I became a little bit disillusioned, and I put the guitar away for a couple of weeks. But when I took it back again and started playing again, I was even better than I was before. You know, because my muscle memory remembered, and it overcame the barriers that I had before. And I just wondered whether that was something that happens in your type of work.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, this, because there are many studies made with imagings, okay, that now focusing on many motor areas that are again working when you are using this kind of robots, okay? Mm-hmm. So what we are trying to see is if also in patients that are being trained for a long time, even if they have a completely damaged of the motor area, this area is restarting again. And to be honest, David, in neurorehabilitation, nobody can tell you that you have targeted your goal after 6 months, because there are patients recovering also after 2 years. And here I have patients being admitted, the patient that usually we call chronic patients, okay, that we have started to be trained with an exoskeleton, and they have recovered again and again, year after year. I have here a young guy of 45 years old, okay, affected by a complete lesion, okay, at level D5, okay, that after 15 years from the car accident using exoskeleton is starting to work again. So this is the very tough idea that our brain and our spinal cord can still be connected if is elicited with a continuous work, with a continuous training, like you can do using technology.
Yeah, that's very reassuring, and I'm very impressed by the results that you've achieved, having seen some of your presentations. So, moving on to ISDM, how did you get involved with Professor Zhang and ISDM? What's the story behind that?
I received an email from the ISDM to have a lecture about my main research. And to be honest, was a typical fall in love with Professor Zhang. So,
yes, of course.
You know,
Professor Zhang,
yes, he's a very eclectic man. Yes. So soon after we have been in touch, soon after we have started speaking, he said to me, "You will be one of the vice president. I like your research. We need this kind of things. Digital medicine can be involved also in rehabilitation. You are using technology, you are part of this idea." So I have accepted. I was at the beginning a bit feared about it. You know, China is very fast.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But it was an extremely intense experience. Very good.
Yes, and we met at the very first inaugural conference of ISDM. That would be back in, what was it, 2014, was it, or 16? Yeah, something like that.
2000, yeah. It's almost 4, it's 2016.
Yeah. 2016, yes. And as you say, we met again at the launch of the Guiyan International General Hospital, where we were looked after very well by Professor Zhang and Professor Liao. And it's really a great honor to be involved with them.
Absolutely.
So how is life in Umbria then at the moment? I know we hear the news in the UK about lockdowns and social isolation, and Italy seemed to be very hard hit in the beginning.
Yeah, in Italy it's quite difficult, especially in the north part of Italy, as you've seen in Lombardy and Piemonte. There are a lot of people affected by the virus, and they are managing still in the ICU a lot of patients, and there are a lot of deaths as well. So it's quite difficult. To be honest, the middle part of the south part of Italy is completely different. We are very lucky in Umbria. We have just 1,400 people affected by the virus. We have about 80 people died, and the second phase after the lockdown sounds to be very fast here in Umbria. So we are recovering very quickly. We are trying to open all, to come out from the lockdown and start reopening all the bar, restaurants, all the social aspects of the region. Yeah.
So you're starting to do that now, are you? Or
yeah, we have started just from Monday, and so I hope, cross fingers, that everything is going well, that our therapy capability to treat the virus is growing very fast. So I hope that all the world will come out from this nightmare very quickly.
Well, I hope so as well. You know, I did a webinar yesterday on tackling COVID-19 with remote continuous care. Very interesting. I did a poll at the beginning of the webinar to ask people what they thought about the track and trace technologies that are being trialed now in the UK. So it's beginning on
your main interest as well. So
well, absolutely.
You're fascinated about it.
Yeah, so it's starting on the Isle of Wight with people encouraged to download this mobile application, which tracks when people are close to you. And so if there is a problem with COVID, you can get an alert to say you may be at risk because you were near such and such a person. So anyway, beginning of the webinar, I asked everyone what they thought about this, whether it was a good idea and ought to be compulsory, whether it's a good idea and ought to be voluntary, whether it's a bad idea because it's impractical, or whether it's a bad idea just because of personal privacy issues. And it was interesting that at the beginning of the webinar, people were not uniformly in favor of track and trace. They were, a good few people said that it was okay as long as it was voluntary. By the end of the webinar, virtually everybody said that it should be compulsory. And I didn't realize this at the beginning of the webinar, but apparently in Israel, this is already compulsory practice anyway, before COVID-19. You have to, the Israel knows exactly where you are at any one time. Exactly. And they don't use mobile phones for that. So they probably have the mechanism built in already to be able to deal with it. Yeah. I just finally, I did notice when I was looking a little bit about your background that you're involved with medical tourism as well.
Yes, we have started at the beginning to involve also patients coming from outside Italy. And we have an offices related with medical tourism and with insurance, the US and the UK insurances as well, to involve people. Because when I start to work with the exoskeletons, a lot of people also coming from Holland and from Israel as well, from Iraq, Iran, asked me to be admitted in the hospital to be treated with technology. So we are trying to develop, but at the moment, I don't know what will be the future about medical tourism. So I have seen that there is a lot of confusion. We have to come out from this COVID-19 situation. Otherwise, the world is changing, really changing.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, and I'm having another webinar next week, which is not health related, although health will be part of it. It's called Planet Earth After COVID-19. So I have, as well as ISDM, I have connections with the International Symposium for Digital Earth, which was effectively started by Al Gore back in 1998. And it's a really, you can use the health of the earth as a metaphor. So with a lot of parallels between how we deal with the environment and the health of the earth. and the technologies you use to deal with monitoring the health of individual people as well. So that's going off on Tuesday next week, and one of my friends is an ex-NASA space scientist. He was a guy who gave the people at Google Earth their very first contract. So he's been right at the beginning, a very interesting guy and very entertaining and a good friend like yourself. So thanks very much for joining me this morning, Paolo.
Thank you very much, David.